Interesting thing that transpired this week. Rose McGowan, she appeared on Fox News to call out Democrats and Republicans. It was spun differently afterwards, but let's listen to what she said, and then we're going to listen to her reaction. Let's take a listen.
And I do believe Democrats, most especially, are in a deep cult that they really don't and know about and aren't really aware of. And I leave the Republicans alone more because I do respect people more that are like, this is what we are, this is what we're about, this is what we're against. Whereas I find that the Democrats are really pretty much almost against all the same things.
So that was part of what Rose said there on Fox News. That wasn't the entire thing. It was a very long clip, so we couldn't show all of you. But I found her explanation actually pretty poignant for a message on American politics. Let's take a listen to that.
I did an interview on Fox News that it causes such a cognitive dissonance as someone who was, at least basically from when I set foot in America, a Democrat, because that's what my mother was. Never question it. Fox is the enemy. And tonight they'll run with, Rose McGowan says Democrats are in a cult. But I also said Republicans were too. If you lean deep into anything and refuse to hear anything else, and you're serving a master that there's no evidence is serving you, then maybe you're in a cult.
Show me the lie, Crystal. I think she's right. She is correct. And this is always the problem when you appear on cable, which is that they're going to splice or whatever, like the particular
they take
part.
it to use
Yes.
to feed their agenda.
Correct.
Yes.
And that's what cable is designed to do. I actually thought that follow-up, frankly, better than what her Fox segment on. And I think it's more important, which is, I'm actually reading this book right now called The Scout Mindset. It's fascinating. And it's about how you have to train your brain in order to override the instant want to go back and recede to your tribal leanings, which is that people, of course, overestimate things that approve their pre-existing point of view, and that actually it's a very human thing that we've learned over the years. One of the reasons that we are the apex predator is to actually be able to check some of those things. We're not doomed, so to speak, in order to just be tribal. And this is where the hate Inc. Matt Taibbi thesis comes in. It's like, this is not the natural condition.
Right.
I will always reject that. And I do think it is important in order to have people out there saying look, if you slavishly believe something because one side says it, then you're probably in a cult. And same, the other way. Look, millions of Americans now believe the election was stolen falsely based on the word of one man. Millions of people thought Russians literally changed votes in the 2016 election based upon lies from the media. And those, I'm not going to say they're equally bad, but they are definitely, it reflects that you can see that whenever one side is in power, there's an equal and opposite reaction there just because of what's happening. I was looking at a study this morning which said that when Democrats are in power, Republicans all of a sudden become libertarians whenever it becomes in relation to presidential power. And whenever a Republican's in power, Democrats are like, no executive orders. We're not okay with this at all. And it
What about
flips.
the Constitution?
Yeah, what about the Constitution? And it flips every single time an administration changes with public opinion, like clockwork, up, down, up, and down. I think this is a good example of something like that.
Yeah.
And I appreciate somebody saying it.
It's very interesting what she said, too, because I think there's a lot of media recognition of some of the cultish habits of the Republican base. And absolutely, because this is what she says, it's like, Democrats are kind of the same in a lot of ways in terms of just reflexively taking out of the value judgment of which things to believe are better or worse, but reflexively believing, what their prescribed set of figures tells them they should believe, tells them what they should support. You saw this very clearly in the Trump era when you had people who were some of the most nefarious actors in modern American political history rehabbed as resistant figures on cable news, where it's like, now that they're being held up by people, on MSNBC and on CNN that they trust as no, these are the good guys. They just sort of memory hold everything that happened before. I mean, even to the extent of George W. Bush, during the early 2000s, nothing would send a liberal into a greater rage than anything about George W. Bush. And now this guy is like, oh, he's great.
Jimmy Kimmel's laughing it up with him.
Yeah.
I mean, Kimmel rose to fame making fun of people like Bush.
Unironically going on the Today Show and being concerned about misinformation, and there's not a single follow-up. Right, not a single follow-up question about dude, you lied us into a war that we are still dealing with the consequences of.
The most pernicious act of misinformation in modern America, maybe all of American history.
And so I think her point of there's a lot of awareness around some of the cultish tribal behavior of the Republican base, especially in the media, but there seems to not be any discussion of similar instincts among a Democratic base, which again you point to is it's there's a natural human tendency to want an identity and want to be part of something, and there's also a natural human tendency. The research shows even when you're presented with countervailing evidence, evidence against your positioning, not only will they discount it, it will actually harden you in your views. So it's a very difficult thing to overcome. But clearly, and this is why I hate friggin' cable news, is because they want to have you on to recite whatever talking points are convenient to them. Even when you say the parts that aren't convenient for them, they're just going to pluck the parts that they like, and that's what they're going to run with, and that's what they're going to blow up to feed their agenda. And so that's why her comments on her own terms were so much actually more useful than what Fox News wanted to run with there.
The segment, it'll be 5 minutes max. 5 minutes is like an eternity there. And then, she doesn't actually get to make her point, and then they'll do a follow-up question and push you where they want to go. I appreciated her message, and I wanted to bring it. All right, well, more Rising for everybody right after this.